Welcome to the podcast, Paul. Great to have you on, mate. Do you mind giving us a bit of a rundown on your background and where you are today?
Yeah, hey Alex, good to be on. It's taken a little bit of time to get this sorted, so mostly my fault, but nice to finally be chatting. Yeah, no, so my background, I guess I've been in B2B tech for many years. Started way back in Melbourne IT, way back in the day, and then spent probably the kind of big chunk, spent 12 years at Aconex, which is a construction tech software. I ran global sales and marketing and customer there. When I joined, we had about 50 staff, expanded to about 1,000, and over 41 countries. So that was so that was a great experience, great journey. We were ultimately then bought out by Oracle. Then after that, transitioned and jumped across and was a CEO of a company called Message Media. Message Media is a CPaaS kind of messaging platform targeting predominantly SMBs, but also had some enterprise customers. Big business. I think we had 30,000 customers, Australia, New Zealand, US, UK. So that was a really interesting experience, very different because it was more, Aconex was more enterprise sales orientated, whereas Message Media was predominantly kind of transactional, a lot of kind of digital inbound, and then kind of transactional kind of selling. Which was interesting. And that got sold back in 21. And then following that, I guess having had a few different experiences, teamed back up with Lee Jasper, who was the founder of Aconex, and started a business called Firmable, which is in the B2B data space. Which is excuse me, what I'm doing now.
Nice, mate. It's a pretty exciting journey, and a couple of big successes there with those two companies selling for over $1 billion, which obviously played a big role in. So I'd love to get into that, and obviously the rapid growth that you experienced, right, and scaling from 50 employees up to
Yeah.
1,000 at your time.
Yes.
So I guess starting at that, like, how did you go from 50 to 1,000? Um,
Yeah, it was like it was one of those things people go, it must have been an amazing journey. Like it must have felt like you were, constantly growing. But it's funny, happened over 12 years and it never really felt linear. Like it never feels easy. I think it's one of the takeaways. You obviously you have good months and you have bad months, and it's kind of when you look back over time, you're like, wow, we've come a long way. It was I think there was a whole heap of things in it. It was in the early days, it was starting to get just a bit more structured around hiring and who we're selling to, and defining our ICP and getting a bit more rigorous on how we're approaching the market and getting a bit more systematic about how we're prospecting, and then thinking about how we grow into other regions, and then it's really being thoughtful about how we kind of grow out those teams. So there was a lot in it, particularly in those Aconex days, but it was it was a great journey.
nice. And I guess the go to market and the sales piece, right? Obviously to keep up that with that headcount, your sales was obviously rapidly increasing. So I guess how did you look at structuring a sales team to sell effectively and have a repeatable process?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and we spent a lot of time thinking about and looking at what drives. So I guess if you start, you go, well, what is the sales efficiency I currently have? So getting some kind of high level metrics around, okay, well, we know that, we spend X on sales, and marketing, and for that, we want to deliver, kind of Y in new business every year. So that's the kind of your starting point. And then and then how does that vary by region? So I think you kind of got to start with a really good understanding of the plan. And then you go, okay, well, to grow, I'm clearly going to need to, um, create more demand, create more pipeline. How am I going to create pipeline? And then, what team reps do I need to either be generating that pipeline or be closing that pipeline if it's kind of generated by other means? So it was really about how do we think about that as a system? And then you're going to go, oh, right, okay, so we've got we big opportunity in the US market. We're really ramping up the team there. And then you go, well, okay, what that means is if we're really growing the team there, we've got to be quite thoughtful about how we kind of hire and enable those reps. So I think it was really kind of a bit of a first principles exercise. What are we trying to do for the year? what does the growth look like? And then what are the implications of that? Is it that we need to be better at onboarding? Do we better at hiring? Is it, so I think it's really a matter of looking at your plan and going, okay, well, where can we improve and what do we need to be good at?
Yeah, nice. And the expansion into the US, what did that mean for you guys? Was it did it open up a massive revenue stream, or was it
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
par
Like
with
it was,
Australia?
yeah, it was, so the US, um, oh, I forget the exact numbers, but the US quickly became a kind of a $50 million business for us. So it was really, really significant in the grand scheme of things. And in most verticals, the US software market is really, really large. Obviously it was big in the construction tech market, and then again in message media, it was a massive market. So it was really important for us to, I guess, kind of penetrate that market there as well.
Yeah, nice, nice. And so leading on to message media, right? So obviously you had the exit with Aconex, and then did you pivot straight into your new role at message media?
Yeah, pretty much to be honest. I didn't. Yeah, I kind of. Yeah, I'm not sure I would necessarily advise that. It was just kind of the way it happened. Yeah, so there was a bit of an opportunity at Message Media, and um, I had done about a year post the Oracle acquisition, and I kind of I knew that it wasn't long term the place for me. Like I'm a business builder. I like being a bit entrepreneurial. I just didn't think sitting within a division of Oracle was going to be something that I would enjoy longer term. So the opportunity came up. It was a great business. I was really excited to do it. I thought I could add some value, and yeah, away we went.
That's nice. So I guess approaching your role at message media was the goal to scale it up and then exit it when you were brought in?
Yeah, yes, it was. So, well, I guess it's always to go in and really look at what can be done in the business, I guess. And then if you can kind of, it's a bit of a, it's a bit of a try it staying, but if you can build a good business, the exit will come. So it was really about, okay, well, what do we need to do in the business to make the business more scalable? There was a whole heap of stuff we had to do from a product perspective. There was thinking through how we open up the US. So there's kind of a few kind of key strategic questions. One was, how do we open up the US market? Two was, how do we consolidate some of the legacy platforms we had? And three was, okay, well, how can we take what is a good and very profitable business, which has good growth profile, and really kind of dial in on the sales and marketing, and be a lot more structured about our execution, and focus on our execution, so we can really kind of ramp that growth. So yeah, and again, there was no one thing. It was okay. It was really stepping back and looking at the whole engine from end to end and thinking, okay, well, how can we improve net retention? How can we improve um, how can we improve the efficiency of our new sales effort? How can we, so there's a whole series of little things we did, which over time all kind of compounded together.
Yeah, nice, nice. And mate, I guess like when you brought into a company, there's probably a whole bunch of things that you can focus on to grow.
Yep.
There's a million things pulling your attention, but how do you really identify what to focus on and what to solve first?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Um, Clearly, there's a bit of experience helps, but I think my advice is always to step back and kind of go, understand what's driving the business, right? So, and most businesses, and I guess a bit in some ways a bit of an analyst at heart, but it's you kind of go, okay, well, how can I map the kind of the economic engine, if you like? What does the demand look like? How does that flow through to closing? How does that flow through to new business? How does that then flow into retention and renewal? And then just kind of look at that, and you might look at that and go, oh, okay, we're doing a really good job of creating pipeline, but we're actually not converting much. Okay. So then there's a whole set of so that's the first, so if you identify where there looks like there's opportunity, so it might be we've got a conversion issue. Okay, well, what can we do about that? Okay, so let's think. Then you start thinking about brainstorming potential solutions, iterating, trying things, experimenting, or you might look at it and go, okay, is we've got a we're not closing the pipeline we're creating. Is that a sales team issue? Is that a proposition issue? Is that a pricing issue? And then you might go, well, we've got a retention issue. Okay, so we're actually doing a pretty good job of landing new customers, but we're not growing because the customers we are landing are churning out. So then you go, well, okay, is that a product engagement issue? Are we selling to the wrong set of customers to start with? So I think So I think just being really thoughtful about laying out the process, and kind of looking at kind of where growth is, kind of leaking, if, in a sense.
Makes sense. So I guess when you're approaching, scaling up a business for an exit, I guess what are the key things that you really had to focus on? Was it obviously just building a good business all around, but was there any more specifics that you had to focus on?
Yeah, I think really getting the team, and this is part of running a great business, right? But I think having a really being really dialed in on, okay, what's our execution model? What are the 5 or 6 metrics that we're executing against? And let's be really predictable about those, so that when an investor looks at it, they go, wow, I really like message media. I love your product proposition, and I can see I can see how you've grown over the last 3 to 4 years, but also I've got some real confidence that you can continue to do that, because it's clear you've got a system about how to do that. So I think that's really important. Is when you're selling a business, people are always looking for, okay, what do I believe about the future prospects of that business? And the more you can, well, make that real, obviously. So, but let's assume it is real. The more you can be quite thoughtful about, okay, here is our engine, and it's really solid, and it's doesn't rely on me. It's a system that we've built, that the team knows really well, and that we can execute on consistently.
I like that. So I guess message media, so it had that exit. How long did it take for you to pivot into the next
Yeah,
venture?
yeah, it's something that Lee and Karthik, our other co-founder, we'd been chatting about for a little while. We, I guess, we'd obviously dealt a lot with data through both of those. So they were both B2B. One was more transactional in nature, one was more enterprise. Even back in the Aconex days, we had one of the things we did to understand our market is we literally created a database of every single, kind of major construction project on the planet, right? So that was a really good example of that was a data exercise we did, which was hard back then, much easier now. And that's was one of the important things that we used in our kind of sales planning, go to market. So you know, we've always looked at how you can use data to really kind of streamline what you're doing from a sales and marketing perspective. Another example of message media was we used to get, thousands of inbound leads a month. And you sit there and go, well, okay, how do I know whether this is a $5 a month messaging customer or $1,000 messaging customer? Because clearly you want to treat them differently, right? You want to send them down different pathways. So I'd say to the team, okay, how do we know? And they're like, well, maybe we can get industry, maybe we can get, maybe we can get revenue, maybe we can get headcount. And I was like, well, actually, it doesn't tell me much about whether they're going to send a lot of text messages. Actually, I want to know what sort of, I want to know whether they're, B2C. I want to know how many customers they might have, because the bigger the database the bigger the set of customers, the more likely they are to be kind of reaching out to a lot of different people. So what we did then was we built a little team in the Philippines that for every inbound lead, looked up, a whole heap of different dimensions, what CRM they use, what their social media profile was, how many followers they had, and that kind of allowed you to triangulate. Go, okay, well, actually, this set here look really interesting, and we should kind of really focus on those. So that was an example of how you use external data to drive efficiency and focus in your sales organization, and that was hard. And we kind of did it all manually. And you go, well, hang on. So if we're building this manually, there's got to be other people out there who kind of need this. And yes, there are international data providers, but our kind of conviction was that external data allowed you to drive great efficiencies in your sales organization. Like it was the kind of the next wave that enabled you to, kind of take actions, do things, kind of orchestrate a sales team, and that the data wasn't great, right? So, and the more people we talked to, the more they told us how terrible it was. So we're like, well, actually, let's build our own. So that's kind of what we did. That was about 3 years ago. We spent a while, and data's hard, right? Like, there's a reason it's hard. It's really hard to build the base data set. It's even harder than to keep it up to date. But the team, Karthik and the Chath and the all the kind of the product and tech team have built what's a really great product. We launched in market just about 15 months ago. And yeah, it's been growing really strongly. So we've now got, I think, over 700 customers. We've got, we've got 12 in the sales team now, I think. So yeah, so getting a lot of great traction, getting a lot of and which we've launched in New Zealand. That's gone really well, and we're launching into Southeast Asia.
Amazing, amazing. So obviously with this company Firmable, so obviously starting from scratch this time,
Mm.
how was that compared to the previous two companies, and I guess your approach to that?
Yeah, it's funny, because I I was early at Aconex, but 50 people is very different to starting from one or three or four or how many it was on day one. Yeah, it was. I actually really enjoyed it, to be honest. Like it's it's particularly now there's a whole set of new tools, and particularly that the whole sales and marketing space, it's changing so rapidly. And almost the experience, it's not out of date from, kind of growing the Aconex days, but the landscape in the world's really shifted. So yeah, that was really good. It was, it was hard, and there's lots of things we, probably didn't get right to start with, but we were, I guess, fortunate that we were able to. I had a good product. We made some, we had some really good initial kind of sales hires, and it just started building momentum. And then the more we did, the more momentum we built, and so yeah, that was good.
Nice, nice. So you've obviously entered into a competitive market, but a difficult one
Yep.
to, I guess, cut through, right? You've got competitors like Apollo and Zoom Info, now, sort of Clay. I guess, how did you think about that coming into the market? Obviously, you're sort of more positioned as being the leaders in ANZ data, but what was your thought process there?
Also, most businesses buy data to sell to a particular region. So we would sell our platform to either they only sell to Australia and New Zealand, or you sell to the team that's selling to Australia and New Zealand. Going geography by geography was actually a pretty good way to do it. So that was the kind of the first thing. The Apollos and the Zoom Infos, like, they're good businesses, right? But they just don't focus on the Australian market very much. It's just not that big enough. It's not that interesting enough for them. They've got both of those companies were built quite a long time ago, so there's kind of a bit of legacy there, which makes it hard to be as agile as we can be. So yeah, we just felt there was an opportunity to, I guess, both engage with the local market in a different way. One of the things we talk a lot about is how do we activate the ecosystem, right? Like, so we want to be part of the ecosystem. We're out there, we're at events, we're talking to our customers, we're on podcasts, we're out there. We're hearing what our customers are saying. We have an Australian-based support team. We have a whole bunch of Australian partners. We partner with CRM integrators, HubSpot integrators, sales and marketing agencies. So it's just for us, it's really about how do we be what is a natural part of an ecosystem, and what that's had. Buying is the other thing people forget. I think is actually you say selling's hard, but buying's hard too, right? So. And particularly as the world gets noisier and noisier in terms of messaging and kind of inbound coming at you, what do you do if you want to buy you've got a bit of a problem around data, and you go, well, okay, who do I know whose opinion I respect? And I go, I hear Alex talking about online, or I was at a lunch when someone mentioned it, or I spoke to my CRM integration partner and they said do this. So what we find now is 70% of our 70% of our deals are coming inbound, and of those, 70% of people who are come looking for us, which is a bit of a crazy stat. So that's kind of latent demand, right? So it's literally word of mouth, referral, ecosystem. So that kind of effort of being active and out there in the ecosystem has really kind of paid off for us. And we've got a great quality data set, and that's the other advantage of being focused on a specific market. You can go really deep into that market, right? Like, we obsess about the quality of our data. We can also build some data sets that are very specific to our region. So there's a whole set of things I think we've done that have really made that kind of proposition kind of resonate.
Yeah, nice, nice. And I guess the plan for Firmable, did you have any, I guess, overarching plans of where you want to grow it to, and I guess what the future looks like over the next few years?
Yeah, I think like there is so much that I think we can now do to help our customers, kind of execute on their sales and marketing, you know, kind of objectives better. So there's, we're at this unique point in time, obviously, where AI is changing a lot of things. What it's allowed us to do is it's really changed the game in the data sets we're able to assemble and the speed we're able to assemble data sets. So, we can now do things for customers that are really quite specific in terms of, very specific ICPs. We're also now looking at really, we've investing heavily in our what we kind of call our signals product. So if you think about traditional sales intelligence, it was, okay, here's the set of companies. How do I find the set of companies I want to sell to? How do I then find the right people within that? And then how do I get in touch with them? What's their email, mobile phone number? So that's kind of traditional sales intelligence, right? Super valuable. That is so, if you can get dialed in on that and feed that to your team systematically and iterate on that, super valuable. Even more valuable is going, okay, well, that's great, but I've got, 10,000 potential prospects out there. How do I know when's a good time to engage with them? So you might go, okay, well, actually, I sell HR software, and I know that every time there's a new head of HR, that's a great signal or event. So that makes, the set of accounts that have a new head of HR much more likely to engage in a productive way. So that's an example of how you can think about, well, what's the playbook I want to execute on? How do I capture that data, feed that in, and really help me more and more target my kind of sales efforts? So that kind of signals, events, much kind of deeper account intelligence is really where we're focusing. And then, customers will either, and then, you can potentially even plug that into your AI sales agents as well. So there's, so that, how do we then help sales teams orchestrate, because that's the biggest challenge for sales managers, I think, is how do I drive, I kind of know that this play here works, but how do I get it rolled out across my sales team and execute it consistently? So for that, you need a high quality data source, and you need to be kind of orchestrating based on events and triggers.
Definitely, I agree. And I guess your other venture, Glitch Capital, which is one of the
Yep.
more recent ones.
Yeah.
Did you want to give us a quick overview of that? I think it's pretty interesting that people might want to hear about.
Yeah, sure. So so Glitch Capital's a venture fund. So it's a founder operator venture fund. We have raised $55 million with Winners, which is our first fund. I'm one of the GPs there. That was really born out of, I guess, the experience we had as, operators, founders, and more recently kind of investors, where we would get involved with companies and they'd be like, it's just, they really valued having people involved who had operating experience. Not that we have all the answers, but we've certainly made a lot of mistakes. So, and there's a set of experience and, just kind of things that we've lived and seen, whether it's how to hire a new CRO, how to expand into the US, how to handle a difficult board dynamic, how to think through how do I compare VCs. So we felt was a real opportunity in the market to assemble a group of founders and operators who had, kind of been on the journey, who both had capital to invest, but also wanted to give back to the ecosystem. So that's what we've done. It's a founder operator led fund. We partner alongside the kind of the core VCs in Australia to come in typically Series A plus, Series A, Series B products, businesses that are kind of post product market fit and really looking to scale. So that's kind of our sweet spot. And that's again, we've had a great reception in the market. That proposition of having founders and operators on the cap table is something that people are finding really attractive. So
Super
yeah,
valuable. Super
and it's
valuable.
also I get to talk to a lot of people about go to market and sales and marketing, which I do in my day job in Firmable. So it all works out pretty well. Busy, but all works out pretty well.
100%. So I guess go to market and sales in 2025 and leading into 2026 soon. Towards the end here, I guess, how are you seeing the shift? Obviously, you talked about the signals, but is there anything else that I guess you're seeing in the market when it comes to succeeding and how companies can get ahead?
There's a lot of new tools out there, of course, but look, I think it's really about just making sure that you have real clarity around what you're trying to do. And, there's absolutely opportunities to take advantage of, data and some of the new AI tools. And, so there's lots of things you can do, but I think it's be really clear about staying focused on, what are the core things you really need to do well and what stage appropriate as well. So I think that's that's probably the big thing I think we're seeing. I do think back to one of my kind of pet kind of thematics is this, I talked about it before, this concept of ecosystem activation. I really think as the world gets noisier, in a sense, we're coming back to people want to deal with organizations who they trust, whose brand they recognize, whose brand they trust, whose, kind of sales and marketing team they connect with at a personal level, that they have a relationship with. So in a sense, it's a bit old school, but I think in this kind of noisy modern world, that's becoming more and more important.
I agree. I agree. And wrapping up now, Paul, if there's one thing that you could go back and tell your younger self, before,
Ooh.
these latest ventures, I guess what would that advice be?
Someone once said to me very early in my career, he said to me, he said, "Oh, Paul, the hardest thing you'll ever learn is how to manage yourself." And I was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean? I don't understand. I don't understand." So I kind of dismissed it, and it really wasn't. Probably 10 years later, when I was pretty tired and pretty burnt out, that I kind of realized what he meant. I think figuring out how to look after yourself, how to uh, how to make sure you're kind of being balanced in your energy and your time. Obviously we're all pretty passionate about what we do professionally, but I guess making sure you look after yourself and and those around you, I think is important too.
Yeah, love it, love it. And yeah, Paul, thanks for your time today, mate.
Awesome,
I'll link your LinkedIn in the description and also Firmable as well. So
excellent.
thanks for your
Well, good
time.
chat. No worries. Take care.